everyone, and welcome back to the Deeply Rooted podcast. I'm Liz,
And I'm Erin.
and we're back today with a new series. If you haven't listened to our previous series, we went over the book of Philippians with a planting root study. So go back and give that a listen if you haven't. Today we're super excited. We're going to be introducing our new series. It's a series that Erin started a little while back last year. So Erin, if you could give us a little insight into what the viewers can expect from this series.
Yeah, so the So There I Was title is basically a military-esque way of jumping in to answering the question, what's your story? We had a mentor at the academy while Liz and I were there that used to say that fairy tales start with once upon a time, but sea stories start with so there I was. If you're not familiar, a sea story is basically a story from our military journey. If you're not a seagoing service, you can call it a war story or whatever you will, but it's a story from our military lives. Again, so there I was is just a clever way to jump into a story. And why are stories important? Why are hearing each other's stories important? That's kind of the question I'll go into next. I think that when we share our stories with each other, it reveals parts of God's character that we might have missed otherwise. So I might have a story from my military journey or from my life where I've seen God at work. And if I share that with Liz, she might be able to hear parts of my story that either relate to her story or that are additional that supplement her story and reveal parts of God's character that she might have missed otherwise. So I think oftentimes the devil, a tactic that he uses is to either kind of make us think that we're the only ones going through what we're going through and that we're alone in our journeys. And so stories can help reveal that no, we're not alone. Other people are facing that same thing or a similar thing. Or sometimes the devil just blinds us from the ways that God's working in the world. So by sharing our stories, we just see new things that God's doing and point us back to him. So on this series, we're going to bring on guests. It's going to be like a guest series where we bring people on and ask them what's their story and have them jump into it using the phrase, so there I was. If you want a deeper insight, deeper dive into the heart of this study, we'll link the original series intro down below so you can go hear me sit down and really more eloquently give a intro to this series. So we'll link that, but we'll start this episode by Liz and I just kind of giving an example and using it as a way to catch up with you, kind of give you a life update. So Liz, tell us your story. What's been going on in life recently and how have you seen God at work?
So there I was in Charleston on my last leg of the road trip, and my car like breaks down. So that's never fun during a PCS transfer season. So I guess I'll kind of start there and then go through the past few weeks, how it's been transferring to a new unit and transferring to a new area and all that. So a few weeks ago, we started our road trip from Texas to Virginia. So we were going to do it in like 4 days. We saw family along the way. It was super fun. And then on our last leg, my battery started dying on my car, so we had to get that fixed and it took like all day. But we still got, it was like the last leg till Virginia, but we still ended up getting there in a decent time. And that starting off the trip was just a reminder throughout the next few weeks that God is the one in control. And it reminds me of Proverbs 16:9. It says, the heart of the man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. And that just kind of was a reminder to me, like these next 2 weeks are going to be chaotic and long days, and there's going to be a lot going on, but like the Lord is in control of it all. And so, yeah, so we got to our house that night, which was super fun. We had nothing for like the first week, which is always fun, sleeping on a really uncomfortable air mattress. I had like pretty bad back pain for a few weeks. But we getting this house was like a whole process in itself too. So it was like such a blessing to be here and like be thankful for that because we had put in like 3 other offers that didn't get accepted, and it was just like really hard to get a house, and it wasn't super fun. So it was just a blessing to be here. And when we got here, we had like a bunch of visitors the first few weeks. We had like someone come like maybe 2 days after we got here, one of my husband's friends. We were like, bring in our mattress. We don't have anything. But it was just fun to be able to host people. And then some of my husband's family came. So it was really fun to just be able to, we prayed for this house and prayed that it would like be a blessing to others and that we would be able to welcome others into it. So that was just such a blessing from the start, being able to do that, and just being able to host people. And then Then I started my new job, which has been good. I have some friends in the office already, so it's nice having some familiar faces, but it's always an adjustment, I think, transferring to a new unit. You're so used to the ways of your old unit and the people there, so it's kind of like a jump scare when you do transfer. And my job is pretty much the same, so that didn't change that much, but the way the unit does things is different, so it's like getting used to that. And sometimes it's hard. I feel like everyone kind of feels this in a PCS. You kind of feel inadequate, like at
Hmm.
your new job, and you feel like you have to kind of like prove yourself in a way, like all over again. Because it's at your old job, you were kind of like in a routine, like people knew you, and you felt like comfortable at work. But now it's like I feel uncomfortable at work. I feel inadequate. Like I can't help out because I have to get like recertified on the qualifications that I have, and I kind of feel like I have to prove myself all over again. And so it's been like a reminder that I need to rely on God's strength rather than my own. I heard this analogy the other day on like a devotional podcast, and it was talking about how working in our own strength is kind of like vacuuming without the vacuum plugged in. Like, like it's not going to be very effective. Like, in order for the vacuum to work, it needs to be plugged into the power source, which in the sense of our faith, the power source is God. So if we want to be effective, we need to be plugged into the power source because he's our strength. Unless you have the Dyson vacuum, like Aaron and I. I guess you have to have it charged. It's like having a dead vacuum. Um, but throughout the season, I'm like constantly, I haven't mastered it yet, but I'm still learning how to give it to God and to work to please him rather than like man. And also going to work with like a mission mindset has helped. Like my work is not just vessel inspections. Like my work is also as like a disciple of Christ. Another thing I feel like I can fall into during PCS season is complaining. So comparing the way things were at my last unit to the unit now. And there's this quote, and the quote talks about being present. It says, "Don't forget how badly you once wanted what you have now. There was a time when you were praying, visualizing, and hoping to be where you are currently at. Now that you've received your blessing, you're too worried about the next thing to notice it. When will this cycle of chasing the next high end? Will you ever truly be fulfilled? Too many people get trapped in the never-ending cycle and they forget to really live, feel, and experience the beauty God created. Learn to be grateful and love being in the moment instead of worrying, overthinking, and stressing about what's next." And so I've just like loved reading that and like thinking on that and meditating on that because I'm really enjoying being here in Virginia. It's like so beautiful here. The community is amazing here. I like my job. So just like being present in that instead of like looking back and looking to the past on how things were or looking to the future on how things are going to be, just like being present where God has me now. And I think you'll catch a lot more because you can miss a lot if you're constantly thinking about the past or the present. You can miss what God has right in front of you. So I've been trying to focus on that. Another thing I've been learning is staying focused on God amidst the chaos. It can be hard because falling out of routine is inevitable during PCS season. There's like so much going on. You're like in a new living space. You don't have any of your household good stuff. And it's just hard to make time for the Lord. And it can cause daily disciplines like reading my Bible and praying to just like fall out the window because I'm like, oh, I don't have a table to do my quiet time on, therefore I can't do my quiet time. And it's like, that's not how that works. Um,
But it
and
feels like it sometimes, definitely.
it does feel like it sometimes. And like when I don't prioritize my time with God, this impacts like my work and my relationships with others and like my attitude for everything. So that combined with moving, combined with marriage, it can be hard if you're not putting God first because nothing else in your life is going to be going the way it should.
It's crazy because this really is our first legit PCS, I feel like, because I mean, going from the academy, I didn't have any furniture, I didn't have any stuff. Like, it's not, I mean, we very much anticipated that move. Like, that's like what you do. You graduate and then you go to your first unit. And so this, I feel like I'm really experiencing when, so many people, whether it's online or in person, talk about like the pains of PCS and like the awkwardness and uncomfortability. Like this is the first time I've really experienced it, and everything is just like raining so true. And I think I underestimated how much it like throws you off. Like it really is part of the sacrifice that you go through, like being in the military. Like even right now, like I am not using my nice camera. My lights are not set up. Like my office is completely disheveled. Like, and it's been 2.5 weeks, and like that's to me seems like a long time. Like I still have things to put away, but really like I feel like it's gonna take us forever because we start work next week. Like I don't know. I just feel like this is the first time I'm really actually understanding like the hardships of PCS.
And it's crazy that we have to do this like every 2 to 4 years. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, we're gonna do this again in like a few years. It's It's taken its
Well,
toll.
and it really, I mean, this is a metaphor for a bigger topic, but like it's even a temptation to be like, oh, I don't want to hang that up on the wall because I have to take it down like in 2 years. Like I just took this down in my old house. Why would I put it like so? And metaphorically, it's the same thing of like, oh, friendships. Like I'm gonna move in a few years. Like I think I was able to fight that more before because I was like, you know, stronger in the. I hadn't experienced again the uprooting and the replanting process, but now we're experiencing it for the first time, and it's resonating, the hardships that people talk about. So
I know. And if you're listening to this and you've been through like so many of them, you're probably like, these girls
mad
don't know.
respect. Yeah,
Yeah.
mad
Yeah.
respect.
It's like I've been through one and I'm like, I finally feel like I'm like over the hump, but every day there's still like something. There's still something. PCS season is rough, and I've also learned through it that like reading the word and spending time with God is an investment.
Mm,
I was doing my Bible recap the other day, and it was talking about how like the house we live in, so the house that we're living in now that we like prayed for is eventually going to be rubble, and the car we have is eventually going to stop running, but the time we spent investing and knowing God is forever and it's eternal and it doesn't depreciate like worldly things. So like prioritizing knowing God above all else because that's eternal is something we should be focusing on more rather than how our house looks because that's fleeting and we're going to move in a couple years, but knowing the Lord is forever and that is what's going to get us through this tough season. And I've seen the days where I don't spend time with God are vastly different than the days that I do. So lately I've been trying to do that every day, prioritize that, and it's been making PCS season go more
mhm.
smoothly.
Yeah, it really is convicting. Like going back to the Philippians study and talking about an eternal residence in heaven. Like it's one thing to like talk about that in a fluffy way that sounds really Christianese and everything, but then when we actually walk through it and realize, oh, like I don't take any of this stuff with me when I leave. I don't take any of the, I mean, I don't take any of the friends, the nice coffee shops. Like I don't take any of that with me when I leave. And so focusing on what we do have forever is is important.
And being present because then you'll miss the new coffee shops
Yeah,
if you're
right,
constantly
right.
thinking about the old ones.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Erin, how's your life update been? How's it been moving with the baby and starting a new job and all that stuff?
I think I'm actually going to take the start of my, so there I was back a little bit further in order to really encapsulate what God's been teaching me recently. Because yeah, I really just had to go back to at the academy. So there I was. I, for those of you who don't know, wasn't a Christian when I started my military journey. And it was through people there and just the things I went through there that really brought me to the Lord and got me thinking that there was something more important than our earthly dwelling. And back when I was at the academy, I mean, I think like so many other, or I hope at least, so many other women in the military, I hope they can resonate with this. They join, and it's a go-getter mentality. I mean, as women in the military, I think by nature we're strong-willed, and a lot of us are type A, not all of us, but some type A, and we have goals in mind, career aspirations, all that. And when I went into the military, I mean, I felt, confident, strong. I was full into the military vision for my life and excited for that and ready to, work hard, be in the trenches. And I was really ready to play the military female role. And then when I got there and I started to get to know the Lord, He really has taken my selfish desires and helped me transform them into His will. And what I mean by that is there's a verse in Psalm 37 that says, delight yourself in the Lord and He will give you the desires of your heart. And back when I was, not a Christian, I would hear a verse like this, or when I was first getting to know the Lord, I would hear a verse like this and think that it meant that whatever I wanted and whatever I pursued, the Lord would give me. And I very quickly, this was something I learned very quickly in my faith journey, realized that it's not that. He's not a genie in the bottle, like I think I've said before. It's more that He will give you the desires of your heart, meaning He will place them in you. He will change your heart if you delight yourself in Him. And so as I've gotten closer to Him, He's really changed my desires, my goals, my vision. And that hasn't been a comfortable process, to be honest. Like it's been good because it's in line with his will, but it hasn't been easy because, as many of you know, I have a baby now. He's almost 6 months old, which is crazy. But that back when I first joined the academy wasn't part of my original plan. I thought that I would, wait till later in my 20s to have kids and have a full like military experience before I had kids. I didn't think I'd be married the day after graduation. Like all these things that have since happened since knowing the Lord and that have been his will weren't necessarily on my radar back when I joined the military. And so I've been really, really wrestling with like, okay, God, I am in the military. You called me to this, but now I have all these desires that you've placed in me to be a good mom, to be a good wife, to be in ministry that on the surface to me have been really hard to tie into than my military career. And so in this whole PCS season, the time has aligned with my maternity leave. And so I went back to work in Virginia for like a few weeks, but I wasn't really doing much there. I was just kind of returning to work and then wrapping up my time in Virginia. But this move has given me another break. And now tomorrow I'm starting back at work full time. And it's tough because again, in my life right now, the desire to go work and be a strong military female have almost seemed conflicting with my job as a mom. And that's not the case. I'm not saying that any woman who's in the military is neglecting their job as a mom. Absolutely opposite. But it's just what God is using right now for me, that tension between the two to grow into to become a better servant of the Lord. And I want to read some more of Psalm 37 that surrounds the verse of he will give you the desires of your heart, because this morning I was reading it just to go over before the podcast, and I realized that there's so much more in there that ties in to what I've been learning. And so I'm going to start in verse 1 and read through 8 or through 7. It says, "Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices." So a few things here. First, what I've been really trying to focus on is faithfulness, because God called me into the military for at least these 5 years. Like after the academy, I owe a 5-year commitment. So I can't deny that God has me here for a reason. So I've been focusing on being faithful. Faithful, the definition on the internet that you look up when you Google faithful is remaining loyal and steadfast. And so I've known that as a definition of faithful, right? You're steadfast to your commitment. You follow through with what you said you would. But this morning I started to think of faithfulness as being full of faith. And I hadn't necessarily, thought of it like that before. But to be faithful to my military commitment means being steadfast, but it also means being full of faith. One thing that's been really tricky upon my return to work is just entering back into an environment where not everyone is a Christian, and there is foul language all the time. There's a lot of complaining. It's not an environment that like really builds me up towards the Lord very often. But if I am faithful, so steadfast, but then also faithful as in full of faith, God will show up there. He can show up there, and he will dwell in the land, as it says in this chapter. And again, it says, "Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers." So talking about the people who aren't Christians in my workplace, like I don't have to fret. I don't have to fret because of them. I can be faithful and full of faith that God will show up there. I also have been reading Jonah. I read Jonah this last week, and I think I was convicted when reading Jonah because I think I was having the same mindset. Those of you who don't know, Jonah is a prophet, and he's asked by God to go to Nineveh, which is a place that's full of sin. And they're like Ninevites are evil. They're, terroristic. They're just not nice people. They're not people that you would think would turn to the Lord very easily. And so Jonah is like resistant to this. He doesn't think that those people deserve love. Like he kind of hates God for loving his enemies. Like Ninevites are Jonah's enemies. Like, why would he go there? But God asks him to go there, and he rebels that. He gets on a ship and tries to get away from Nineveh. But God, I mean, through a series of events, gets him there, and all Jonah has to say is, uh, in 40 days, Nineveh shall be overthrown. All he has to say is literally, I think it's 5 words written here. And the Ninevites believe and turn to God. Like, that's all it took was Jonah's faithfulness to go where God called him to go, and call out their evil. And I think the reason I've been feeling convicted is because God has, again, called me to be faithful to my military commitment. And I've been resistant to it. I've been trying to, flee and, leave as early as I can from work each day so I can get home and, not take on extra commitment because it'll take away from my time with my family. And yes, my family is my number one priority, but also there's I think evil in the workplace that God wants me to call out and be strong and bold and courageous, calling out. And I have yet to determine what this looks like exactly, but there's ways that God wants me to be a light in the darkness at work that he will use. And I don't even have to do much. Like Jonah barely did anything. In fact, he was very stubborn and was not, eager to do any work at all. But God still, changed the heart of the Ninevites, which were like the most far gone people. And so I really have been trying to focus, like going back to work again tomorrow, on like the question of, am I okay with God having mercy on people who I think are the furthest from the Lord? Like, am I okay with God using me to change their lives? Like, am I going to be faithful to him? And do I believe that God has the power and the desire to turn the hearts of even the most far gone people? And so again, totally having this internal wrestle that is gonna be here for a while. I'm gonna have to wrestle with it for a while of like, if I want to stay in the military, if this is the place where women thrive the most. Like, I'm wrestling with all those really big questions, but none of those questions right now are the point. The point is that God called me here, and I am going to be faithful, steadfast, and full of faith, meaning I'm going to trust that he will show up in even the places that I see as the darkest, which really, in the big scheme of things, when the Bible talks about persecution, like people swearing next to me and making me bitter, like that is not nearly as bad persecution as like so many Christians are facing. And so I can step into that place and trust that the Lord is going to show up. And yeah, so that's like that's the biggest thing that I've been really wrestling with recently. Obviously, the normal PCS hardships are happening too. I mean, in Virginia, when we arrived there at our first unit, like I immediately had friends. Like I had people that were already there who I knew. And here we have a few people that we know, and community has already, shown up. And when it comes to childcare and worrying about my son, leaving my son, like I haven't had to worry about that one bit. Like God has already provided the best childcare situation that we could have asked for. But I mean, definitely like finding a new church is hard. Like that's uncomfortable. And like you're talking about comparison, every time we try a different church, I'm like, oh, but it's not like my old church. Like, oh, but there's not as good friends there as I had in Virginia. Like it's so easy to do that. And so I've been wrestling against that. And even this morning, it's a Sunday, so we're trying to, we're getting to church this morning and trying to evaluate churches, because you have to, have discernment and judgment in a sense of a church, but yet it's hard because like no church is perfect. Like again, our earthly dwelling is what's going to be perfect, not here on earth. And so I'm trying to change my mindset of like a consumer mindset to a servant mindset. Like how can I go and serve this church versus what can I gain from this church, or what can I gain from these friends? Like I want the contrary to be true of like, how can I serve these people? How can I find new friends because I want to lead them to Christ? My neighbors, I want to lead them to Christ. So all of it, it's a really good growing season. And like we're just talking about, this is our first time going through it. And so that's why we're going to bring some other wiser women onto this podcast and ask them their stories where God has shown up in the midst of their military journeys, because we have so much to learn from them. And I think that others, regardless of age and stage, we can all learn from each other.
That's so good, Erin. And I'm just reminded you have like so much you're balancing, like balancing being a mom and balancing going to work and balancing planning Roots Ministry, and I just like wanted to encourage you in that and but encourage you to like honor your commitment because what you're doing right now is gonna like inspire so many other women that are also in the military, like me. It's like you show them how you can be a good mom and like a good leader in the military, and I think that's like so needed. I know you only have like a few years left in your commitment, but just like staying true to that because seeing that is so needed in the military environment. And like I'm encouraged by you walking through it and I can learn a lot from it. So just don't be discouraged in this new season.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think one thing I've also learned is just that the answer is not a one size fits all. Like the answer for each individual person is so different, but that doesn't mean that the the experience that I'm going through, like you're saying, isn't going to benefit you. Like it will benefit you, even if it's a different answer that I come to when it comes to will I stay in the military than your answer. Like I have learned so much from women who choose to, stay in the military and do a full career. And I've learned so much from people who aren't even in the military, moms who aren't even in the military and are doing that. Like we have so much to learn from everybody, and everybody's experience is valid because of the fact that God is working in that story. It's God is the common denominator in it all.
Mhm.
So I am learning so much from you too. I mean, like it's crazy just how God, like in different seasons of our life, God still can have parallel lessons going on. Like, even though, like, yes, my primary focus right now is the whole mom thing, but that doesn't mean that, like, I still can't relate to you and can't relate to my friends who are either still at the academy or, 20 years down the line from me. Like, it's just so cool how God interweaves himself in our stories.
So next week we're gonna have our first guests on the podcast, so we're super excited about that and excited to hear their story.
And after that, if you have any people who you think would be great on this podcast to bring on and share their story, please let us know in the comments or send us a message on Instagram or however you can get the message to us. We are so interested in learning from other women. And if you have people that have incredible stories, like crazy, amazing stories that you know about, let us know. But also if you have people who are just uplifting people and, have nuggets of wisdom that you think would be beneficial to us. I mean, me and Liz personally, but then also to everyone listening, let us know. And don't forget to subscribe and like this podcast. Help us get it out there to more military women, both wives and active duty. And yeah, I just, again, amazed at God's work and thankful that he works through even our disobedience. So, all right. Well, with that, I'm Erin.
I'm Liz.
And we'll see you next time and pray that you stay deeply rooted.